Everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm finally going ahead and putting some siding up, and I wanted to do a short video on this because it's kind of interesting. This is going to be board and batten siding. I'm using 1x12 Eastern White Pine boards that are textured on the outer surface. You know, I've done a lot of videos in the past about board and batten siding, but that was generally focused on green lumber. And when you're putting up board and batten as green lumber, you have to really be careful how you nail that wood so that it doesn't split as it dries and as it shrinks. You need to allow for some movement in that lumber. In fact, that's really how board and batten came about. It's a technique tailored for green lumber because it allows the lumber to move and shrink as it dries, and the battens cover up any gaps that result between the boards. So in the past videos where I put up board and batten siding green, I generally recommend nailing down the middle of the board, leaving the edges unconstrained so the board can shrink in as it swells without splitting or cracking. There's other techniques where you can nail on one edge only and let the other edge stay free. In both of those cases, you're counting on your batten strips to really manage what happens at the joints and keep the boards up against the building. This lumber is kiln dried, and so that changes things quite a bit. And in this case, for this lumber, what I end up doing is nailing on both edges of the board because these boards are really not going to be shrinking. They're not going to split. They will still change a little bit with the weather, and I've seen that with my other barn that has used the same siding. It's kind of almost like an indication of humidity, the way the doors fit and everything else, because this lumber still shrinks and swells a little bit with ambient humidity. But in terms of the moisture, you know, inside of the cells of the wood that we worry about with green lumber, that's not an issue here. So we really don't expect any splitting, cracking, or dramatic changes in this lumber. So I like to nail these boards right on the edge, usually about a quarter to half inch from the edge. And that way, when we put up our batten strips, all these nails are going to be covered, and it's going to have a nice, neat appearance. And so in a second here, I'm going to go ahead and throw some more boards up so you can see the process. A couple things I do want to point out though. This particular wall is right around 8 feet. I have 9-foot house wrap, and so I just let it spill over down on the bottom. And then I put up this ledge board. I think that's 2 3/4 high. My skirt board is 5.5 inches. It's a treated 2x6. And this basically lets me rest these boards as I'm putting them up, gives me a reference. It's nice and consistent. And the bottom of the boards will be halfway down the skirt, which is about how I like it. And you could do it without the ledge board, but you have to be very careful if you want a neat appearance to always match up your bottoms, not let them wander. And then you're also, you know, going to have to be holding up these boards as you nail them. So I think putting up a ledge board just makes so much sense. It just holds the boards in place. It gives you a nice crisp bottom edge, and so I highly recommend doing that. In cases where I have my house wrap overlap down, what I also do, as soon as I put up that ledge board, I come through with a utility knife, and I basically trim off the house wrap so that once these boards are up, once I remove the ledger board and move it down to the next wall, the bottom of the house wrap, the excess is just going to come off too. And makes just a nice quick way to trim it, and know that your house wrap goes all the way down to the bottoms of the boards. Now, I did put in one window over there last night, I guess, and that was kind of experimental because I haven't worked with this brand of window before. Normally with a pole barn, I put my windows on the outside of the siding and then trim around them, but as I've mentioned before, I want this to be a real tight building because I'm going to insulate it, heat it, and cool it. So in this case, I put the windows up against the house wrap and flash them, and the siding is going over the top of them. One thing you need to remember when you do that is that the nailing flange for these windows, and these are vinyl windows, it's got a little bit of thickness to it. Your nails have a little bit of thickness to them when you tack them onto the window. And then the corner of vinyl windows where they weld the vinyl together has a little bit of a rough, I'd call it a little bit of a ridge or a rib right at that corner. All those things add thickness, and if you try and push your siding up against that, it's not going to sit flat with the rest of the building. So one thing I do around the windows is I just take a router and put about a 3/4 inch wide groove around the boards where they will go up against the window, about an 1/8 inch deep, just to cut a little bit of a relief into those boards so they can sit up against the window and lay flat against the girts of the wall. And what we'll do, maybe not in this video, but as I move down this wall, there's going to be another window over here, and I'll do a video on that process where I cut through the house wrap with the window and flash it and things like that. So at this point, I think we can get started. I've cut about 8 or 10 boards here. These started out as 16 footers, and so I had to cut them down to 8s. And what we'll do now is go through and mow ahead and kind of put some boards up. One thing I'll point out now, about every 2 or 3 boards I will take a level and just check to make sure my boards are vertical, because there's no guarantee the factory cut on the boards, which might be on the bottom, might be on the top, I'm not sure. There's no guarantee that's perfectly square. These are real good boards, but there's no guarantee these are perfectly straight. And so if you just keep stacking them against each other, you could get to the point where you get to the middle and you find out your boards are crooked. So it's good really every 2 or 3 boards to check level, and if you have to, you can tilt the board a little bit, knowing that any gaps are going to be hidden by the batten. So I think that's my whole preamble. Let's start putting up some boards. Alright, so there you have it. That's kind of a quick short video about nailing up the siding. You can see it goes fairly quick, especially if you pre-cut your boards. And really what I'm going to do now is move this ledge board all the way down that way and continue the process. I've got a window over here I need to cut out and flash, and I'll probably be doing that in the next video. Maybe tomorrow. It's supposed to rain. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get anything done tomorrow. Yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for today. Hopefully this was interesting. One other little tidbit I want to point out to you. You'll notice this wood has all kinds of knots. It's got defects. Most of the knots are tight. Some of the knots are loose. What I like to do, you'll never get a perfect board, as we all know. If you saw your own lumber, you know you got to work with what you get. But what I like to do is look over the knots. If any look like they would ever let water in, I orient the board so that that knot points down and it would drain down, and that'll minimize the chance of water ever getting into a knot and causing rot inside of the board. You know, I've got a 2-foot overhang here. I'm really not concerned about any issues with that, but just in general, when you're putting up boards and they have knots and defects, you know, look at them, and if you can, aim them down so that they would always drain and they won't collect water. And that's kind of just a little bit of a tip. So I think that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching.